No one in the quiet village of Helid expected greatness to rise from its dusty paths. It was a place where time moved slowly, where the songs of the temple echoed more loudly than the sounds of battle. BENAIAH, the son of the respected priest Jehoiada, grew up among scrolls, incense, and sacred rituals that shaped the lives of all who lived there. His destiny seemed sealed long before he understood what destiny even meant. Everyone believed he would inherit his father's role, offering sacrifices, blessing families, and serving God within holy walls. But deep inside him, something stirred differently, an unexplainable fire, a restlessness that no ritual could quiet. From a young age, BENAIAH felt drawn to the stories whispered by travelers who passed through the region. They spoke of distant wars, of soldiers who defended Israel with unwavering courage, of moments when God himself intervened to deliver his people. Those tales made his heart race in ways that temple duties never did. While his friends studied chants and laws, he found himself staring at the horizon, imagining a life far beyond the village, a life where faith was tested in ways far more real than reciting ancient texts. His father noticed the difference early on. Jehoiada would often find him practicing with carved wooden sticks behind the house, striking imaginary enemies with surprising skill and discipline. Instead of reprimanding him, the old priest simply watched, silently praying for clarity. He knew that God called each man in his own way, and sometimes the road to the divine did not begin in silence, but in conflict. Jehoiada sensed that his son carried something rare, faith mixed with courage, devotion blended with fire. Despite the peaceful routine of the village, BENAIAH lived with a constant sense that he didn't belong to the life prepared for him. He admired the temple, respected every law, and loved his father deeply, but something inside him insisted that his worship would not be expressed through offerings, but through action. It wasn't pride, nor the desire for glory. It was purpose, pure, relentless, and undeniable. He believed God had shaped him not to hide his strength, but to use it. One morning, without dramatic signs or divine thunder, BENAIAH simply knew the time had come. While helping his father prepare the altar, a certainty flooded his heart with such force that he could barely breathe. He set the tools aside and looked at Jehoiada with a firmness he had never shown before. Hours later, the entire village knew. The priest's son would not follow the sacred traditions. He would join the army of Israel. Reactions spread like fire: shock, disappointment, confusion. But BENAIAH remained silent, his eyes reflecting a determination impossible to break. His farewell to his father was both painful and beautiful. Jehoiada, though heartbroken, did not oppose him. Instead, he placed his trembling hands on BENAIAH's head and prayed a blessing that echoed through generations. He did not bless him as a priest blesses a student, but as a father blesses a man stepping into destiny. When BENAIAH walked away, he carried not only a warrior's desire, but the full weight of a father's love and the unseen hand of God guiding his steps. Life in the army was nothing like the quiet days of the village. The training grounds were filled with harsh voices, grueling drills, sweat, blood, and exhaustion. Many doubted the newcomer. "A priest's son?" they laughed. "He won't survive a real winter." But BENAIAH didn't respond. His silence, once a sign of humility, became a shield of discipline. Every day he pushed himself harder than the men around him, driven not by pride but by purpose. Slowly, respect replaced mockery. The moment that changed everything arrived in the heart of a brutal winter. While patrolling with fellow soldiers, they were approached by a shepherd trembling in fear. A lion had been terrorizing the region, attacking flocks and killing livestock. Fresh tracks led to a deep, snow-covered pit nearby. The soldiers examined the cavernous opening and froze. No one dared enter. The cold alone could kill a man, and the beast inside was desperate and starving. While the others debated cowardly alternatives, BENAIAH felt something within him shift. The call he had carried his entire life echoed through his chest, pulling him toward the danger instead of away from it. Before anyone could react, he walked through the snow, descended into the pit, and vanished into the darkness. The wind howled like a warning. The soldiers stared in disbelief as the echo of a furious roar shook the ground beneath their feet. No one witnessed the battle that took place in that frozen chamber. They only heard the chaos: claws scraping stone, heavy impacts, a roar that trembled the air, and then silence so thick that even the wind dared not disturb it. Every passing second stretched like an eternity. Some whispered prayers, others assumed the worst. But then, breaking through the snowy mist, BENAIAH emerged from the pit with slow, exhausted steps. His breath steamed in the cold air. His hands were scraped and bleeding. And behind him lay the body of the lion, lifeless. That moment forever altered the way the army saw him. BENAIAH was no longer the priest's son experimenting with bravery. He had faced death in its rawest form, alone in a frozen tomb, and returned victorious. Stories of his feat spread quickly. Whispers around campfires, tales told among commanders, admiration growing in every corner of the ranks. But even in the midst of this rising glory, BENAIAH remained grounded, refusing to let pride take root. Yet deep inside, he understood that this was only the beginning. Killing a lion in winter was not his destiny. It was merely the door that opened the path he was meant to walk. Something far greater awaited him. More battles, more enemies, more impossible trials. And through all of it, he would learn that his strength was not measured by victories alone, but by the faith that guided his every step. BENAIAH's reputation grew quickly after the lion incident, but fate did not give him time to rest. Soon after, Israel faced a threat that shook even the most seasoned warriors. Two Moabite champions, known for their terrifying size and brutal combat skills. These men were raised for war, towering figures whose very presence made ordinary soldiers step back. Yet when the call to confront them sounded, BENAIAH stepped forward without hesitation. Something inside him whispered that he was meant not only to fight for Israel, but to inspire it. The battlefield that day was silent, as though the earth itself held its breath. The giants approached slowly, their armor clanking like thunder. They mocked BENAIAH, laughing at the man who dared face them alone. Their shadows stretched over him like a warning of death, but BENAIAH's pulse remained steady. He did not see giants. He saw an opportunity to prove that God could use one faithful man to overcome what entire armies feared. When the battle began, the giants lunged with the force of falling trees. BENAIAH dodged their strikes with a speed that defied logic. He moved as though guided by something beyond human skill. The ground trembled beneath their stomping feet, yet BENAIAH's steps were light, precise, and unbreakably determined. One giant fell first, collapsing with a roar that echoed across the valley. The second fought harder, enraged by his brother's death, but BENAIAH dismantled his attacks with ruthless accuracy until he, too, fell before the warrior of Israel. Those victories elevated BENAIAH into the inner circles of David's army. Soon after, he faced yet another formidable foe, an Egyptian warrior of enormous stature, armed with a colossal spear that looked more like a tree trunk. No ordinary man would attempt to fight such a monster, especially with nothing but a wooden staff. But BENAIAH was not ordinary. As the Egyptian charged, the spear cutting the air with deadly force, BENAIAH maneuvered with the same bold confidence that had carried him through every impossible battle. With breathtaking speed, he disarmed the giant, ripping the massive spear from his hands and turning it against him. The enemy fell to the ground with a thundering crash, defeated by the very weapon he trusted. Soldiers who witnessed the scene were left speechless. They knew then that BENAIAH's victories were not accidents. They were signs that God had chosen him for something greater than war itself. It wasn't long before King David himself took notice. The king was a warrior in his youth, and he recognized the same fearless fire burning within BENAIAH. David appointed him commander of the royal guard, entrusting him with the one responsibility that only the most loyal and courageous men could bear, protecting the life of the king. This position required strength, yes, but far more than that. It required discernment, honor, vigilance, and an unwavering heart. Serving David brought BENAIAH into a world of political tension, hidden threats, and shadows lurking behind palace walls. Enemies of Israel no longer came only with swords, but with deceit, ambition, and betrayal. And BENAIAH faced each threat not only as a warrior, but as a man guided by divine purpose. His loyalty to David became legendary, and the king trusted him with secrets too dangerous for ordinary soldiers to know. Eventually, BENAIAH was placed as leader of the 30, Israel's elite unit of deadly warriors. Each member was known for immense skill and bravery, yet BENAIAH stood above them as commander. His leadership was not born from fear, but from respect. The men followed him because they believed in his courage, his vision, and his unwavering devotion to justice. However, there was an even more secretive group known as the Three. selected for missions so impossible that most soldiers never heard of them. These operations required not just courage, but spiritual strength, an ability to perceive God's will even in the darkest of circumstances. BENAIAH became a central figure among them, carrying out missions that shaped the safety and future of Israel. As David grew older and the question of succession arose, political storms erupted across the kingdom. Adonijah, one of David's sons, attempted to seize the throne through manipulation and hidden alliances, but BENAIAH, always alert to danger, sensed the corruption behind Adonijah's actions. His loyalty to David and to God pushed him to intervene, ensuring that Solomon, the rightful heir chosen by God, would take the throne. When Solomon was crowned, the kingdom appeared stable on the surface, but threats persisted beneath. Old enemies, ambitious commanders, and traitors still lingered, and the young king depended on BENAIAH to eliminate the dangers that could destroy the nation. It was a grim responsibility, but BENAIAH embraced it with fierce devotion, knowing that sometimes justice required a sword. Though the battles he fought during this period were darker and more painful than any giant he had slain, BENAIAH never doubted his calling. Each act of justice weighed heavily, yet he carried the burden because he believed Israel's future depended on it. His sword became not only a weapon of war, but an instrument of divine purpose, shaping the destiny of a nation chosen by God. As the years passed, Israel flourished under Solomon's reign. Peace replaced war, wisdom replaced conflict, and prosperity spread across the kingdom. BENAIAH, now older and seasoned by countless battles, began to sense the nearing end of his military journey. His body bore the marks of war, scars etched into his skin, memories heavy in his mind, but his spirit remained unbroken, steady as the God he served. He no longer fought lions or giants. His battles had shifted inward, toward the quiet struggles of the soul. Young warriors often sought him out, sitting beside him in the shade of the courtyard, hoping to learn the secret behind his strength. But BENAIAH always gave the same answer. Strength alone meant nothing. What mattered was conviction, faith in something larger than one's own life. He taught them that true courage was not found in the swing of a sword, but in the choices a man makes when no one is watching. He explained that his victories were never about proving himself to others, but about honoring the purpose God had written into his heart. Every battle, every dangerous mission, every moment when death hovered inches away, none of it made sense unless viewed through the lens of divine calling. The stories of his accomplishments had grown into legends, spreading far beyond Israel's borders. Children repeated them in the streets, soldiers retold them around fires, and elders used them to teach lessons about faith, bravery, and obedience. Yet BENAIAH never allowed pride to take root. Instead, he reflected on the cost of those victories, the friends buried along the way, the enemies who once shared meals at the king's table, the heavy decisions he could never forget. He often returned in thought to that winter day, descending into the pit to face a starving lion. That moment, he realized, was the beginning of everything. It wasn't the lion he fought that day, it was fear, and the lesson he learned remained with him until his final breath. When a man refuses to bow to fear, he becomes unstoppable. As the kingdom prospered, BENAIAH spent more time mentoring the next generation. He taught them how to wield a blade, but more importantly, how to wield integrity. He told them that a strong arm might win battles, but a strong heart sustains nations. The greatest enemy, he said, was never the one standing in front of you, but the one whispering doubts inside you. In his final years, BENAIAH found peace not in the memory of battles won, but in the certainty that he had walked the path God intended. He saw young men rise to become leaders. He saw Solomon rule with wisdom greater than any king before him. And in all of it, he recognized the quiet thread of divine purpose that had guided his life like a steady hand on his shoulder. When he finally laid down his sword for the last time, the weapon felt heavier than ever, not because of the metal, but because of the history it carried. Giants, lions, traitors, conspirators, armies. His blade had known them all. Yet the weight that truly mattered was the legacy attached to it, a life defined not by power, but by unwavering commitment to what was right. He understood something that eludes most warriors, that physical battles end, but the spiritual ones continue until the final day, and the only way to win them is with faith, constant, disciplined, humble faith. This truth was the masterpiece of his lifetime, the wisdom he hoped would outlast every story told about him. As his strength faded and the nights grew quieter, Benaiah often sat beneath the stars, remembering the God who had walked with him through every valley. He spoke softly in prayer, not for victory or protection, but in gratitude, for the privilege of serving a purpose greater than himself, for a life that mattered not because of his name, but because of his obedience. When the day of his departure finally came, the soldiers mourned as though an era had ended. And in truth, it had. They buried him with honor, not because he was the strongest warrior Israel had ever seen, but because he embodied the rare kind of strength that time can never diminish, the strength of a man who lives with conviction, courage, and unbreakable loyalty to God. Generations later, children would still hear his name whispered in awe. And although the details of his battles would fade through the centuries, the essence of his life would remain a beacon, that a man is measured not by the enemies he defeats, but by the faith that guides his heart. Benaiah's story endures because it teaches the most powerful truth of all, that true greatness is not earned with a sword, but with purpose. And those who walk with purpose become legends that even time cannot silence.